Hello, welcome to Broken Grounds video series. My name is Karine, and today I want to talk to you about my final 2 tips to get your garden started this spring. So if you haven't received the downloadable PDF resource, you can get that through the link in the email that you received in your inbox, or you can sign up for my e-newsletter through my website and get that free resource. So definitely check that out if you haven't already. So my final 2 tips, and my 5 tips to get your garden started, are start small and stay close. So I know that starting small kind of flies in the face of the go big or go home mentality. But I just want to remind you that just because it's possible doesn't mean that it's necessary. In other words, just because you have the potential for a huge garden space doesn't mean that it's necessary or that it actually fits your lifestyle. So for those of you who have taken some of my workshops or have followed me, you know that a lot of my gardening advice and design advice is informed by this concept of permaculture. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the term, permaculture stands for permanent agriculture or permanent culture, and is a design science for sustainable human habitat rooted in the observation of natural systems. So I know that doesn't really clarify anything for you. So if you want to know more about it, you can check out the link on my website, What is Permaculture? And also you can join me for the Permaculture Design Series that I'll be offering beginning this March, and I have more information about it at the end of this video. So definitely check that out. So again, my gardening advice is informed by this concept of permaculture. And in permaculture, one of the guiding principles is use small and slow solutions. So really design your garden to the scale of your life, to the scale of your time, your budget, and your resources. That would be what I would recommend. And what we're looking for is to be successful this growing season. And being successful means staying out of the realm of overwhelm. And it's really easy in the spring to get super excited about everything that we're going to grow and how big our garden is going to be. But mid-season, oftentimes, we get overwhelmed by the watering chores, the maintenance chores, the weeding chores, and sometimes people walk away from their gardens because it's just too much. In Bozeman, I used to have a community garden space, and people would be all excited at the beginning of the spring, tilling up the soil, planting all their stuff, and then mid-season, you'd see that some of those plots were just abandoned because people just simply didn't have the time to maintain them. So it's better that you maintain a small 4x10 plot well and you get a great yield out of that garden rather than having a 300 square foot garden and it being kind of in disarray and unmaintained by mid-season. So definitely keep that in mind. We've all heard the expression, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. So what we're looking for is instead small wins, small successes, rather than large epic failures. And you can grow into your garden. So your garden can expand year after year as your observation and interaction with your site grows and as your experience as a gardener grows. So definitely also keep that in mind. So my final tip is stay close. So again, it's informed by this concept of permaculture, which says that we maintain and care for what is closest to us. So this also applies on a social level, right, as well as on a gardening level. So for example, at our place, my garden, where I have my tomatoes and lettuce and cucumbers and things that I need to look at and maintain on a fairly regular basis, that garden is 15 feet from the back door. So that makes watering chores, weeding chores, maintenance chores, and harvesting super easy and convenient. And typically, you know, especially if you're using a hose to water your garden, that spigot is attached to your house. So having that garden as close as possible to your house is what I would recommend. In addition to that, integrating that garden into the rest of your backyard space. I think there's a tendency oftentimes for us to separate those things, separating our garden from where the kids play, from the flower garden, etc. And what I recommend is that you integrate all of those spaces. So if you can do that and it makes sense for your space, I'd highly recommend it. I know that in Montana we have the added pressure of wildlife. So if you're not in the city, sometimes deer can be an issue and you need a fence. So we have fenced our entire property so that in our backyard all of those different spaces can be integrated. But if you can't do that, if that's not realistic, then I would at the very least recommend that your fenced garden space is as close to the house as possible. I know that 50 to 100 feet doesn't seem like a long way to go, but it becomes quite far mid-season when you're hauling out the hoses, when you're having to water, when you're having to maintain that space. So staying close to your house is my final recommendation in my 5 tips to get your garden started. So it's March and things are ramping up for the spring growing season. My seeds have arrived in the mail. I'll be starting my seeds in a couple weeks. And I really look forward to taking you through the growing season and taking this camera and taking it outside. So look forward to my next video where I'm going to be talking about using a small greenhouse for season extension. But I would also love it if you want to join me in person at one of my upcoming workshops. I have a new workshop this season, Organic Gardening Made Easy, which is for the beginner gardener. It gives you just the nuts and bolts of having a successful, easy, cold climate veggie garden this spring. And then I have my Popular Edible Backyard series where I go into more depth about designing your yard and garden, delve into soil building techniques and also some out of the box kind of gardening techniques and strategies. So definitely check that out if you're interested in going a little bit deeper. And then finally, if you do want to know more about permaculture and permaculture design, I'd love it if you could join me for my permaculture design series, which is the 3rd Saturday of the month from March to June. And I'll get into design fundamentals, capturing water, building soil, and creating a food forest. And of course you'd benefit from taking the whole series, but you can also take just individual workshops as well. So check those out as well. So I'd love it if I could see you in person and not just through this camera this spring season. And thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you soon.